Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Suzan Owens, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about this book that you wrote about numerology. And we also want to talk about one that you're currently working on, right? We can actually scoop it for our listeners. This will be cool.
I'm ready. I love it. I'm so excited to do this. I thought this was going to be a regular numerology interview, which I love. Don't get me wrong. But now that you're talking about this, it's like, I haven't told this story. Yeah. Certainly not in this arena. So I'm excited.
And me too. So where were you born?
Nampa, Idaho.
Okay. So is that where you grew up?
No, not at all. I was born in Idaho, and we bounced around for about 4 years.
Okay.
And then I was deposited along with my 3 other half siblings into a children's home in Lewiston, Idaho. Mm. And so at the age of 4, here's an interesting story. Yeah. It was, and I don't know, I don't remember this. This is people telling me this, but it fits. So it was December 21st, 1960, that I was put into this children's home with my half siblings. And it was December 23rd that my parents adopted me, or my new parents met me for the first time, and it took about 8 months for the adoption to go through. So technically I was an orphan for only 2 days, but yeah, abandonment and all kinds of stories. Anyway, so my first 4 years were, I never knew my birth father. He was only a sperm donor. And my birth mother, my biological mother, we all had that in common. The rest of us had differing fathers, some same father, but she was 21 years old and had 6 kids. And she was married to a guy that would put his coat on in the middle of winter and we wouldn't see him for 3 months. And government assistance at that time was potatoes or anything you can get from the neighbors. It was very different. So the only option really was to put us in a children's home until she got her life in order and then would get us back. But that didn't happen. So I was raised, get back to your second question, I was raised in Pullman in Washington. And I lived most of my growing up years there until I was in my 20s.
So you went to high school in Pullman?
I did. I went to high school, great school, and small town, but college influence. That's where WSU is, Washington State University is. So there was an incredible education there, really, public school. And I was blessed with all these women in my life that could teach me things to knit, crochet, sew, bake. I learned all these things. My mother was a golfer. She was a championship golfer.
Oh, wow.
And she had all these other wonderful things that she liked to do. But I was, again, blessed with all these people in my life that pretty much knew what I was doing every minute of the day, that small town thing, right? And were able to just let me grow and nurture me. And yeah, it was pretty wonderful upbringing. My parents were pillars in the community and really, really good people. I was really blessed to have them raise me for
What
sure.
was your favorite thing about growing up there?
Oh, two things. I had a horse that I
Mhm.
lived on and rode bareback. Who had time for a saddle? We raced horses bareback. We jumped horses bareback. We did all of it. And so the horseback riding was thing. And then Pullman isn't very far from the Snake River.
Mm.
So I like to say I grew up on the Snake because we'd
Mhm.
go down and haul a boat and we water skied. I slalomed when I was 12, I think, 11, 12.
Wow.
So yeah, those two things really stand out as a great childhood
Awesome.
experience. Yeah.
Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Oh, there were so many. Like I said, I was really blessed. Um, you know what I'm going to jump into as a teenager because that's a real challenging time, and it was for
Sure.
me. I needed mentors, and
Mhm.
I found a woman. She knew me since I was adopted. Most of these
Mhm.
people knew me as soon as I came into town,
Mhm.
but we really connected when I was 15, and she was probably 10 years older than
Mhm.
um, my mother, and my mother that I mean my mother that raised me. And her name was Anne, and we would just talk about things. And she was going through a divorce, which you didn't do at her age, and at that era, women and men just didn't divorce.
Yeah.
And so we really connected on a level. We were both kind of trying to find our own way and our own thing, and we were very close. So I would say she really kept me on the straight and narrow for a while. I mean, it was really important. And then I've found other women mentors throughout the rest of my life. It's been interesting. I've kind of replaced Anne throughout my life. Real interesting that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
No, I don't think so. I'm a writer and I was really born a writer, but I didn't really know that then. And I look back on some of the things that I wrote in high school and I went, yeah, I should have known that I was a writer, right? So I would say English. If anything, English was really fun, but I was not a great student. Didn't really enjoy it. I Here's a funny one, and truly, this is the era that it was. My parents, bless them, told me I was average, right? I mean, just average, and I think that was kind of the thing then. Nobody really thought about advanced placement or any of that. You were just average.
Mhm.
And I think to them that was a relief that I wasn't nuts. I don't know.
Mhm.
And so I limped through school. I didn't try very hard, but I English really, grammar, writing, all that kind of sang to me. And I got my undergraduate degree at WSU and nothing fancy. And then when I went on, well, business and communications, but um, certainly not honor roll. And then I got my graduate degree 20 years later.
Wow.
No, not 20 years later. Let's see, wait, 20 years ago, I got my graduate degree in teaching English as a second language. And I got straight A's in college and grad school. So it's like when you're ready, you're ready, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
anyway,
we believe in the saying that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
absolutely. And
It's absolutely the case.
I loved it. I loved it. And I really excelled. I was an overachiever and I'd go back. I love academia. I'd go back again if I had a reason to. So
What
anyway.
made you choose Washington State University?
Well, I went to I went to Bellingham at the
Mhm.
first when I left. I graduated from high school and I went to Bellingham. And that was a hippie college.
Mhm.
And that was kind of my year to inhale. And which okay. And I did not do well. It was a party year. So
Yeah.
I came back and I went to work and I ended up working with a lot of women that were, oh, I don't know. I was 19. They were 26. I mean, they were at least 10 years older than I. And I thought, I don't want to hang around with they were fabulous women. Don't get me wrong. They were really wonderful people. But I just kept saying, this is not what I want. So I took a year off, not intending to go back, but it was 2 years. It was a year later, a year and a half, that I said, I'm going back to school. I'm going to finish. So location.
What made you decide to go back to school?
At Gonzaga or then?
Well,
Go back-
actually,
oh.
so you went that first year to Bellingham as kind of a party year, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
And then you decided to go back to school. What was it that motivated you to do that?
I wanted to be with people my own age. And I, you know what? I think there was a level of me too, Mike, that said, I can see the writing on the wall. This is going to be my life. And again, these women are lovely and they're beautiful people, and it was a great job and all that. But I thought, that's not what I wanted. It's not what I want to do.
This is not where I'm headed. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not my thing. So my dad was in business. He had his own business and he was an entrepreneur, incredible guy. And so business was in my blood, I'll tell you. I can't say that. I mean, I just learned so much from him. And then, so my minor was in business. My major was in communications. I like to talk, you know.
You're kidding.
So yeah, I know, right? Just ask me a question and I'll fill your answer. But anyway, so there was something more, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do when I got back into it, but it laid out, and I was supposed to graduate, and I did. And then I said, oh, here's a funny one. So I decided, my parents sent me to Hawaii in 1979 for when I graduated, and I came back and I said, I'm moving to Hawaii. And of course, they were devastated. And I had a boyfriend at the time. And as it got closer and closer that I was supposed to leave, I did not want to go. And the only thing that kept me going was I told everybody I was going to go, right? So now I have to do it.
Right.
Yeah. So I packed up, moved to Hawaii, moved to Honolulu. And in 1979, wow, there was a condo, didn't face the water, and it was $100,000. And we were just, oh my gosh, that's just crazy money. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So I lived in Honolulu, and my boyfriend couldn't live without me. So that's what I say. I don't think he'd say that. But anyway, so we lived together, and it worked. I mean, I had a great job. I had a wonderful experience. And then things started shifting, and we thought, if we're going to get ahead, we probably need to go back to the Northwest, or go back to the Northwest, go back somewhere, the mainland. And we ended up in Spokane. So got married there, raised my kids there, and lived there for 40 years, I guess it's been. Yeah.
So what job did you have in Honolulu?
I worked for Liberty House, which was Neiman Marcus of Hawaii. And I was in a management training program, and it was an interesting working there. I really did enjoy it, and it was elegant, a lovely store. But that wasn't my branch. You know what, Mike? I have never been a 9-to-5er ever. I've never been good at that, and don't make me do the same thing twice kind of person, you know. So that was a tough one, but I loved it. I love living in Hawaii. And then I went back in 2009, I moved there for a couple of years. So
why did you pick Spokane?
You know, that's funny. When my boyfriend at the time ended up being my husband, when we moved to when we came back, we said we really like Vancouver, Washington. That seemed like that was a city we were going to try to do. And then my parents were in Pullman, and our friends were in Pullman, so we ended up in Pullman. Well, then he ran into an old friend that said, "Hey, come work for me," and he lived in Spokane. So job, yeah. And that worked for a while. And then my now ex-husband, Jeff, and I started an auction business, and he's still doing it. But it was wonderful. It was challenging and exciting and wonderful to create our own business. And that was a pretty exciting experience doing that, and then raising the kids and all that. So Spokane's like home. I'm not there anymore. I'm in Idaho now. I live in Coeur d'Alene, so different
Coeur d'Alene's
place.
gorgeous.
Isn't it a stunning city? And
Yes.
and oh yeah, well, not today, but I'll tell you, it's taken people coming here to remind us how absolutely stunning this place
Yeah.
is. Really, yeah. We kind
Yeah.
of took it for granted, you know.
And to a person that I've met there, they are just absolutely blown away. I've heard heaven on earth. I've heard, and it's true. I mean, I've only been there once where I spent a little bit of time. We stopped there we actually flew into Spokane a couple of years ago. Um, my wife and my youngest, and we rented a car and we drove through Coeur d'Alene out to Whitefish from Spokane.
Yeah.
That is one of the prettiest drives ever. I mean, and we saw a black bear on the way back. I mean, it was incredible, right? Um, it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. God's glory, I mean, it's just incredible. We stopped and actually had lunch at the lake,
Oh, sure.
and just we were just absolutely blown away at the magnificence
Mhm.
of it's just incredible. So, yeah, big Coeur d'Alene fan. So you lived in Spokane for, you said, 40 years. What made you decide to leave Spokane?
Well, it was 2005. My daughter got married, one of them, and the other one was working, and my father had just passed, and I'd lost my mother years before.
Mm.
So I was ready. I was divorced. Great marriage, great divorce. I was done. And I decided I wanted to travel.
Mhm.
And so I traveled all over Europe, and then I ended up in the Middle East. And then, as I was trying to find a new place to live, I landed in Egypt. I landed in Cairo. And so I decided that was where I was going to stay. So I lived in Cairo for a year in 2006, I think, and worked at I did a whole bunch of stuff. Crazy place. I loved it. Oh my gosh, I loved Egypt. And it really felt like a past life experience. And it was. And if you want to talk about that, the fringe stuff, I'll tell you that too. But
Guaranteed, I want to talk about it.
oh God, it was great. So I ended up doing a radio show for kids. I worked with a woman
Oh,
called Lubna Abdelaziz. And if you mention that to any Egyptian male over the age of 40, they'll just swoon. I am not kidding. She's a lovely woman. She's still with us, but she was the Marilyn Monroe of Egypt in the 60s. Stunning woman. She did a lot of incredible movies. She worked with all of them. Anyway, she was doing this radio show, and it was for children, all about holidays, all about tradition. And then I played an American woman who traveled. So that was my role. And we had she wrote every one of the scripts. She was amazing. And I go to the radio station and record this. And believe me, it's not like any radio station. It's unreal. And I did that. And then I wrote for the oldest Egyptian newspaper, which is the Egyptian Gazette. So I wrote a few
mhm.
columns for them. And then for the most part, I met other travelers, other teachers. I thought, because I had a teaching degree, I was going to teach English. And I got there and I just thought, no, I have to understand, when I came from Gonzaga, I had taught there, and I had incredible students from all over the world that really wanted to learn. And when I got to Egypt, it was like, yeah, it was more classroom management, and I didn't want to do that.
Mm.
So I lived for a year there, and then in the summer, people said, get out of town for the summer. It's too hot for one thing, and you get an influx of other people from the Middle East, so just time to leave. So I went south. I went to Kenya first. I started out in Nairobi, and this was cool because Africa is I'll go back in a heartbeat. And I've been back to Cairo a number of times, but I would do Africa again. So I ended up taking the summer, and I went through oh gosh, I went through Kenya
Mhm.
and Tanzania and Zambia, and I did a bungee jump over the Zambezi River between Zimbabwe and Zambia. That was a blast.
Wow.
And then I drove myself across South Africa on my own. Safaris everywhere. Now, this was the thing. This was so cool because I thought, oh, I'll just do one. And what happened was, you see an elephant at once, you've seen them all, and that is so not the case. Every time I could get somewhere where I was going to be able to do a safari, I would do it. Well, and then I rented a Toyota and drove through Namibia, and I was my own safari. I just pull up at a watering hole, and here comes a herd of elephants, from babies to the masters, 70 of them. It was just extraordinary to watch. And springbok across the road, everywhere. I drove and totally safe. Believe me, I was absolutely felt secure everywhere I was, except Johannesburg. And that's another story I don't want to talk about. That's another one for another time. But I loved Africa. And then I came back to Cairo, and my two daughters, it's time to come home, Mom. Okay. So I'd have to come home and then kind of regroup and check in, and then I take off again. So that started really my years of travel, because I'd get home and then I'd have to take off again. Can I tell you another story? This is a cool one.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when I was in, I'd taken off again, and everybody was fine. Everybody was doing well. So I felt like I could go, and I went to New Zealand. And New Zealand is the place I tell people, if you want to travel to outside of the United States, but kind of feel like you're still at home, go to New Zealand, because it really, people are fabulous. And this was before the earthquake, that last one that kind of cracked up a few things. But I traveled all over the North Island and all over the South Island, and just loved it. I'd go back there. I'd live there. Yes, that would be one place I could absolutely live. But as I was traveling through New Zealand, I kept thinking about freighters and freighter travel. And sure enough, in the newspaper one day was, if you want to know about freighter travel, talk to Hamish Jameson. No kidding. In a little town called Napier. Well, the next town I was coming to was Napier, New Zealand, in the islands. Anyway, met him, and I said, I want to do a freighter. He said, well, you're not going to get a freighter out of here. And I thought, yeah, I think I am. Sure enough, he called me 2 weeks later, and he said, I got you a German freighter out of Dunedin that goes through Australia. It'll stop in Australia, and then it'll take you to Malaysia, where a French freighter will pick you up a couple of weeks later, and you'll go to China and back. Count me in. Wow. So the German freighter had Malaysian sailors. Fabulous.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.